In 2018, DICE and Electronic Arts announced the next installment in their widely popular Battlefield series, Battlefield 5. It was a return to the series' World War II setting, and a sort of continuation from the last game in the series titled Battlefield 1, focused around World War I. And people were upset. Really upset. Many pointed to it being something about social justice and woke culture infiltrating historical shooters. Many others pointed to a general lack of historical accuracy in the game being a problem. I don't think it was either of these popular proposed answers to the overwhelmingly negative reaction to the game's announcement. What is our American preconceived idea of World War II? We've seen how it went from highly controlled, propagandized, heroic, clean myths around American exceptionalism and good war narratives with some earlier videos. We then saw it transform into a more grounded, brutal, morally gray, realistic outlook on the conflict. However, I think we still found that a sense of nobility and respect soaked our later examples of Saving Private Ryan, The Thin Red Line, and Fury. Why is it that this war remains to have a sense of nobility and respect when others might not receive the same treatment in our popular discourse? For example, the Vietnam War is practically a caricature of what it was at the time in our cultural consciousness. We make memes about rice fields and Fortunate Son, and it acts as the backdrop for more grand and experimental narratives in video games and films. The Iraq War is oversimplified and overshadowed by a sense of cynicism and distrust from American imperialism. Video games tend to only treat it as a setting for less story-driven games, and many of the films that take place around the war are more interested in individual narratives and adjacent issues such as trauma, rather than understanding the essence of the conflict itself. World War II cultural products, on the other hand, explore the conflict in numerous ways, which we've already explored many on this channel, and they remain with a sense of good faith and honor. For the most part, I am speaking in generalizations here, and I am aware that there are outliers to everything I'm literally saying right now. But in a general sense, this remains true. Can we make sense of the immediate outrage over Battlefield 5 by analyzing and applying our exploration of World War II films to the video game landscape? Does it provide a clear-cut answer to why perhaps you and many others were upset by what they saw in the Battlefield 5 announcement trailer? Well, let's explore that. Welcome to Analysis with Alex. So let's go over what we've established in our exploration of World War II movies. During and right after the war, there was a considerable effort put into maintaining a hero's myth and a sense of strength and pride surrounding the conflict and its combatants. This was accomplished through propaganda films at theaters like Why We Fight, and the suppression of documentaries or stories that counter these narratives. This attitude towards World War II remained throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. However, we saw the use of more campy and fantastical stories when it came to covering espionage or the strange interest of certain National Socialist groups during their reign. We can still see now, as we explored in our Fury video, how these polarities exist when discussing the more serious, heroic side of the Allied forces, or the more campy, strange side of the Axis powers, but more on that later. The 1990s gave a shift to the popular perception of World War II through more grounded and realistic narratives, whether it be through replicating the sensation of combat in Saving Private Ryan, or exploring one's spirit and moral mindset during the war in The Thin Red Line. These films laid the groundwork for how movies still explore the conflict to this day, and in turn, greatly influenced how American citizens continue to view the war and war in general. This is the context that has crafted our cultural consciousness of American citizens when it comes to World War II. So, what does that have to do with the outrage over Battlefield 5? Well, observing the tone, attitude, and even aesthetics that these cultural products have built up, and that's not even including other important cultural products such as books or earlier video games, you begin to see where DICE and EA went wrong. Let's look at that trailer in question. So let's take away all the historical inaccuracies and any perceived pandering this game might have been engaging with. Let's just look at it. First, it's rather bright, but not simply because it's bright in the Pacific Battlefield 1943 kind of bright. It is a vivid, glossy, over-the-top assault of colors and sunshine. This is an overall far cry from the typical aesthetics we see in World War II products that aim to keep the conflict's appearance in either a more grounded sense of lighting, such as Thin Red Line's use of only natural lighting, or purposely keeping the color palette more muted and drab. It already conflicts with certain things we feel and think about the war on an aesthetic level. Then we can look at the overall tone of the trailer. The trailer very much wants you to be aware it is an over-the-top campy video game. People are diving out windows, jumping on vehicles left and right, shouting witty remarks, sliding while shooting LMGs, taking down planes with guns, and trying to look cool while the points continue to rack up in the middle of the screen. It feels more like a Fortnite match than a depiction of combat in World War II Europe. Again, this totally conflicts with what the established context surrounding the conflict upholds. This doesn't feel like Saving Private Ryan. It feels fun. Sure, historic first-person shooter video games are fun. They are basically my favorite genre, but they often keep things within our established context. There's a sense of respect towards the time period, even if we are playing a game around it. Not to also mention the epic, crazy trailer soundtrack that most other World War II cultural products try to avoid. Often, they have little to no soundtrack at all, and if so, it's usually more subtle and somber. Very little fits into our cultural consciousness of what something about World War II should be with this trailer. Therefore, I argue there's already something baked into a mass majority of people who saw this trailer that would cause them to dislike it or even outrage over it. It's not difficult to find evidence of the overwhelming dislike of this trailer even to this day. People are going back to its comment sections just to dunk on it and dislike it. We can view some other games real fast that this doesn't happen to. Most notably would probably be the Call of Duty series. World at War was the last World War II Call of Duty game before Battlefield 5, and it's widely considered to be a favorite of the franchise. It matches all the hallmarks of the context we've explored. Drab and more muted color palettes, grounded and brutal combat, depictions of heroism against egregious acts of violence and depravity, no epic soundtrack, just chaotic war noises. And if there's something goofy and fun about it, it's kept to the Nazi zombie game mode, which, as we established, was set up in the 1980s to further add strangeness and evil to the Axis powers. The main game of World at War is Saving Private Ryan, but you can have some of the keep too. Even the game's most recent World War II installation, simply called Call of Duty World War II, didn't receive the same level of backlash despite having some questionable things in it. I would argue it's because the marketing of the game wasn't this. The genre, World War II first-person shooters, is mainly carried by smaller independent games such as Hell Let Loose at this point. And the gameplay varies so much from the gameplay of these big AAA title games that it maintains a sort of niche community. These communities are typically favorable toward the game as long as they also fit into the established context, even if they joke around and make memes about the game itself. We can even look at later marketing for parts of Battlefield 5 to see the striking difference. The game's Pacific Front update trailer is totally different from its initial announcement trailer. It basically looks like Saving Private Ryan at times. It's bright, but in a way that makes sense. The characters present act like soldiers would actually act and perform, and it's less focused on making sure you know how it's a fun video game. Basically, all the elements that went wrong with the first trailer are subverted for this, and the reaction shows. Rather than rage and dunks happening in the comments, it's overwhelmingly about how, hey, I enjoyed this update. So why am I pointing out that there's this inherent thing in our culture that compels us to react to a video game trailer in a certain way? Well, it should make you ask, do I react and think about other things in this way? We've outlined a long history with various influences directly and indirectly attributing to how our culture views World War II, and in turn, perhaps more significant to our lives now, all the ideas and themes that are included within that topic. I'm not saying it's alright, and I'm not saying that it's all wrong, but I want to call attention to how it's simply assumed and baked into how we think and view things. Even simple color palettes and aesthetics are tied to it in a proper and improper way. I encourage all of you to think critically about what cultural context you might be stepping into with certain things. It might be history, like World War II. It might be geography, like viewing the American South. It might be certain people groups, nationalities, subcultures, or religions. It does take extra work on your part, but I believe taking this extra work helps us avoid becoming passive consumers at the whim of whoever is programming cultural products. And instead, this empowers you to seek truth and beauty in a real and active sense. I hope this series and this video have encouraged you in this way. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my analysis here. Let me know and others know if you think there's passive consumption to combat in other areas even more than we've been trying to do in this series here. If you liked this video, please give it a like. If you didn't like it, let me know that too. Anything helps me out. If you enjoy video essays like this one, or also long form book reviews with some light analysis, please consider subscribing and seeing what else I have on the channel. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you all in our next exploration.